microphone? Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I will talk to you today, as you just heard, about the evolution of HuffPost. Not so much because that might be so interesting for you, but kind of by looking through the lens of HuffPost, I hope you can get some perspective and learnings on, what's really going on the digital scene and how is it evolving. So what I will do is I'll try to talk you through what it is we have experienced so far, how we've built the brand, but also looking a little bit ahead, talking about what are some of the trends we are seeing, what are some of the things that we feel are important as we move forward. Before I jump into my presentation, and please, if you can't hear anything, raise your hand. I might be mumbling a little bit today. I just arrived from New York 1.5 hours ago, so I'm a little bit jet lagged, but I'll try to do my best not to mumble too much. Before I get started with the presentation, I thought it was actually interesting to sit and listen to the first couple of things and the survey. Obviously delighted to hear that 86% feels that digital platform, digital communication is a key driver for what you're doing in your everyday work. Another thing that I think was interesting is that the notion about marketing being dead, PR being dead. From my chair, from my perspective, I do not believe that is the case, but I do believe that we are in the middle of a paradigm shift. I do believe that we need to evolve those disciplines if we want to be relevant with what we do from a communication, marketing, PR perspective. The reason for that is, and that is one of the reasons why HuffPost has been successful, is that media has been democratized. Media is not what it used to be. It used to be broadcasting, it used to be us telling people what we wanted to tell them. That's no longer the case. It's been opened up. There's a feedback mechanism now. People have a chance to actually get back at us, good and bad. And obviously, we need to be set up in different ways to handle that inflow of communication coming the other way. So I think the paradigm shift is one important thing. The other thing is, I also feel that if we want to be successful in this day and age, PR, communication, marketing needs to be much more conversational. It needs to be much more content-focused, because that is really what it takes to re-engage the audience in the digital age. Again, I'll touch on some of this in my presentation. But I thought, since we're starting with that, I thought it was interesting to kind of close that loop. I'm just trying to find out where I have my clicker. Here's my clicker. Quickly, these are the things that I wanted to touch on today. As I said, HuffPost, global media company, how do we get there? What's the foundation of our success? And as I said, kind of how are we looking into the future? What's happening? Just a big fast slide on all the things we have achieved so far. As you can see, over the last couple of years, you already heard that, we've launched globally. We have more than 1.3 billion page views on a monthly basis. A lot of minutes spent on our side. And we are still continuing our expansion because so far it's been very successful for us to take the model and roll it out internationally. We have grown our model throughout the changes in the online media landscape. You heard 100 million. We're just shy of 100 million. We're getting close to 100 million. And as you can see, this graph even starts after we launched. We launched in 2005, so it's a 9-year-old operation. It's the biggest online news media platform out there by now. And as you all know, there's some amazing news brands out there. The Guardian, New York Times, Wall Street Journal. None of these guys has been able to make this digital transformation. I think one of the reasons for that is obviously we have had a digital-first approach. We have not had a legacy brand, a legacy business to deal with. We've been able to hire people and bring them in with a different mindset, working in different ways. Also, we have from the very beginning put technology at the core of what we do. At HuffPost, you won't find our developers in a basement somewhere. They're in the middle of our newsroom. And that has been a key part of our success, that technology has helped us drive things forward, understanding what kind of tools we needed in order to engage the audience we wanted to engage. really, if we looked about it, we heard in the introduction, HuffPost, a blog. Yeah, in 2005, HuffPost was a blog. That's how it was launched. Today, it's obviously a global media company, but it's launched as a blog, as a place where people could share their thought, where there would be some news, but it was as much about sharing ideas, having perspective on things. And to this day, that is still a key part of our DNA. That is why HuffPost has been successful. HuffPost is not a news site. It's also a news site. But if you look at it through that lens and just think it's a news site, HuffPost would not have been as successful as it has been if that would be the case. It's really the platform thing, the community, that is the thing that has made HuffPost successful. We've engaged the audience. We have more than 55,000 bloggers on our platform. We've had more than 300 million comments since we started. You know, that is an engaged platform. That's an engaged community. And that's what's helped us drive this growth. These are some of the stages that we have gone through, and that has had a huge implication on the business as we have evolved. In the early stages, search was super important. Search is still very important, but today, social has really taken over as one of the big drivers, and understanding social and playing that game is something that has radically changed our business. And actually the last frontier or the way the business is moving right now is into mobile. Over the last 12 months, we've gone from having less than 10% of our traffic on mobile devices to now having around half of our traffic coming via mobile devices. And why is that important? It's important because it's a different experience. It's a very different experience than when you sit and look at HuffPost on a desktop, and you need to treat it as a different platform, a different way of consuming the media. We almost made the same mistake as a lot of, I think, print publishers did when the internet came. A lot of print publishers thought you can just take whatever they have, the magazine, the newspaper, put it online, and it would work. That didn't work. You need to create stuff for online. Just like you need to create stuff for mobile. Not necessarily create everything from scratch, but it's a different way of consuming. It means that headlines need to be different, pictures need to be different, stories sometimes need to be shorter or set up in a different way. So for us, in the beginning, we thought we can take our desktop stories, just put them on mobile. We're still doing some of that, but we now have a team that is 100% focused on mobile. And that was mindset-wise something we didn't think that we had to do, but I've realized that that is key for us to be successful. Video is also an important part if you're in the communication space and if you're in the publishing space like us. The reason for that is when people log on to the internet today, around a third of what they do is looking for online video. So obviously, if you're a credible publisher or news publisher, you need to find a way to get across with a message in video. The foundations of our success, I talked about some of them already. Conversation, you know, the community. That is one of the key reasons why HuffPost have been successful. And today, you see a lot of sites out there that have a share button where you can comment on. But honestly, that has nothing to do with really creating conversation, gathering community. That is an afterthought often. And again, that is one of the reasons why we've been successful. As I said also, we have a digital-first approach. We do not have an analog legacy. And that's obviously very, very useful for me because it means that the way we have set up our newsroom, it's very different than any other newsroom that you'd see. You know, at HuffPost, we always say that at a traditional publishing house, if you're a journalist, if you're an editor, your job stops when you press enter. You know, then your job stops, it goes up, and your story will be there. At HuffPost, we say, you know, our job and work really starts when we press enter. It's not just writing the story, it's kind of understanding what happens with the story when you press enter. And that is, again, you know, something that we need to factor in when we staff our newsroom. As I said, technology at the center of what we do. If we hadn't done that from the very beginning, if our tech team wasn't as respected and as part of the team as the rest of the organization, we wouldn't have been able to move as fast as we do. We still, every 3 weeks, we still launch new features, new things. We have what we call 3-week sprints. Every 3 weeks, we launch between 50 and 70 new features. Every 3 weeks. So this is a continuous thing. We have around 100 people that is just doing that is focusing on that. In total, HuffPost at this point in time is around 1,000 people, so 10% of our workforce is focusing just on this. And as I said, the global expansion. The reason why we've been pushing so hard to do that right now is because the industry is changing right now. For those of you that are interested in the industry, I would highly suggest that you look at the New York Times Innovation Report. It's a fantastic report. It also shows that they haven't really started to move into digital. There's a lot of things they have to do. They obviously have an amazing brand, so if they're able to do the things they put out in the report, I'm sure they'll come back strong, which is why, again, there's a window of opportunity for us right now, because they need to fix their existing business first and make the digital transformation, and then they will obviously come back and globally expand at a fast rate. How we see HuffPost, people often ask me, who are the competitors? I actually don't see New York Times as a competitor, and I don't see Facebook or Twitter as competitors. The thing is, we're in the middle of what we call content creation and conversations, right? We bring that together. And that's why I said to you from the beginning, we are a platform, a news platform. We're not just a news site. We're bringing these two together. We are marrying these two things in order to create the best possible experience, in order to bring to our readers, to our consumers, the best of the web, the best conversation that is around news right now at this point in time. If you look at Facebook as an example, we're the biggest publisher on Facebook. So we have the most shared stories on Facebook. We're one of the biggest on Twitter as well. And that is very, very important. Another thing that has happened over the course of time, and why I say it's a very different game if you want to play in the social media age. What has changed is the pace of the news cycle, but also the pace that brands need to talk to their audience. So obviously, if we talk marketing, for a long time, marketing has been about flightening. So you do campaigns, you do 3 campaigns a year, you have a flightening over 2 months every time. That's what you do. That is not how the audience are consuming media today. The audience is always on. So if you want to stay relevant and be with your audience, you need to be always on. You need to have content. You need to have continued conversations with your audience if you want to stay relevant. And obviously, that is difficult today because very few organizations is set up to do that. For HuffPost, it's meant that we've gone from 5 years ago when social wasn't there, when social wasn't important, to produce 200 stories 5 years ago, to now producing 1,600 stories on a daily basis. It's a new story every 58 seconds. It's not because I want to do that. I would actually prefer to produce 200. It's much easier to do 200. The reason why we're doing 1,600 is, if you want to win the Twitter, the Facebook, the social game, you need to have a lot of content. You need to stay relevant because the cycle is so fast. So that's one of the ways that we've done it. And when I say 1,600, we don't produce all those stories ourselves. We do partnership, we use our community, we have bloggers, because from a viable business perspective, I would not be able to hire enough people and create a business that would work if we produced everything on our own. So partnerships in this world also become highly important. In terms of the key areas, we have more than 50 verticals, but we actually have repurposed that and put it into these 4 areas that are key for us. So we're in the news and business section, we're entertainment, we're in lifestyle, we're in tech and innovation. And this is the average monthly minutes per visitor across these. So as you can see, news and business, that's our DNA. 12 minutes on a monthly basis, 6 minutes in entertainment, 7 in lifestyle, 4 in tech and innovation. We have a very affluent audience. 21% have a household income of $150,000 plus, and we have 30% of our audience under 35. So a very interesting, a very savvy audience, a very affluent audience. I already talked a little bit about that. Old versus new. the old way of doing things, homogeneous traffic, single platform, side sections. And if you think about it, if you're a journalist in one of the traditional newspapers, you write to have the front page story. That is the key thing. That's what you care about. We don't have front page stories. So there's none of our writers that care about that. They care about kind of creating stories that generate a lot of traffic, a lot of interest, social search, cross-platform, and different brand identities. So that's also a very different approach. Verticals is a way that a lot of publishers are working, so this is also how we worked when we started. We had HuffPost Entertainment editors that were responsible for that section, HuffPost Fashion, HuffPost Celebrities. This is just a sample set of how we were organized. Actually, we have found that in order to be able to produce enough, in order to stay relevant, we had to reorganize. So now we've actually taken and created clusters. So we have more people that can stay on stories and work across different things. So we're moving away from specialized HuffPost Entertainment people to have broader section people, so we can be on 24/7, we can produce enough content, we can stay relevant, because otherwise, again, in terms of having enough people, staying engaged with the audience, it's going to take simply too many people. So organizational-wise, it's very important to understand how you organize in order to get this done. In terms of scale, and these are numbers from the US, because no one is doing them globally, so I wouldn't be able to make that comparison. But again, in news and business, it's actually only CNN that are bigger than us. In lifestyle, we're among the biggest 3. In entertainment, we're number 2, we're among the biggest 4. In tech and innovation, we're the biggest. So if you look at it, if we were standalone businesses across each of these individual pillars, we would be 1 or 2 in each of these different businesses we are in. We've decided to bundle it and create an even bigger business, but I think that's an important point. Another thing that I think is very important is how you use technology, how you use it to be smarter about your decision, how you make decisions as you go. One of the things that we've focused a lot on is empowering our people, the people in the front line, the people in the trenches. They need to know as much as I do about it. And we have a lot of data. HuffPost is very data-driven. We look at all kind of data on a second, on a minute, on an hourly, on a daily basis. And what we have done is we've created very sophisticated dashboards that we can give to our people. So they can see, at this point in time, at this second, they can see what's trending on the internet, what's trending on HuffPost, what kind of headlines are working, what is it people are searching for. All these kind of things they can see. And by empowering them, by giving them that knowledge, they're becoming better at serving that audience. So that's really what we're trying to do, empower them so they can service the audience better. Another thing we're doing is, because of social, what social is doing is it's really changing the way people are consuming content, and also from our perspective, arriving on our site. So when people came via search, it was quite easy. We could send them through the front page. We could program the front page so we could get them into our funnel. We could get them into more content. We could get them to stay longer on HuffPost. What social is doing, not only for HuffPost, but for everyone out there, social is sending people to one story, which might be 15 layers down on a page on HuffPost. And I don't know at that point in time what story is going to be next to that story they came for. So unless you're very good at predicting what these people like, then the likelihood that they will only read one story is very high. And over time, that will hurt you, because if you're a publisher, you want people to stay as long as possible. You want them to dwell. You want them to engage. So one of the things we're doing right now is working with passive personalization. We're basically creating interest graphs for all the people on an anonymous basis, but every time they come, we build more knowledge about them. So they will have a number, and every time that number comes in, I'll know more about them. I will know if they arrived on 3 times on an Obama story. They're very interested in the political stories we have. So I'll make sure that the other stories that are next to those stories are related, so we get much better click-throughs, so we get much better engagement, so we get them to stay longer. So again, technology becomes super important as we move into the next frontier, and already now it's becoming super important if we want to really tap into what social media can do for us. We already looked at kind of what we have launched, so I'm not talking too much about that. One of the other key things that we've done, as I already said, analytics and operation becomes very, very important for what we do. Technology is important. Of course, it's important what we do editorially. The majority of our people are editorial resources. But as I said before, the job description you will have as an editor on HuffPost is very different than the job description, the same job description you would have at probably any other news organization out there. And that is exactly because of, as I said, when we press enter, that is when the real job starts. That's why we have engagement rates that are much higher on our articles. We have comments, sharing of our stuff that are much higher than competitors. The next frontier, where are we innovating next? Where are we going next? We're innovating with video. As I said in my opening, we believe that video is one of the important frontiers. It's something that the community is spending a lot of time consuming, so we need to find a way how to do that. Optimizing cross-screen experiences, there's a trend here where there's a shift to mobile. I talked about that. I'll talk a little bit about kind of the implications on our business, but not so much just on our business. These are trends that have implications on everyone's business out there. The dominance of social media, I'll talk a little bit about how we can leverage that for social publishing. And then, native advertising, what does that mean? What's happening with traditional advertising? So quickly, I'm just going to run through this, and then I would like to open it up for questions, because these are my last slides on this. So Facebook, one of the interesting things is video views doubled in the first 6 months of 2014. So video is growing very fast. Every minute, 100 hours of video is uploaded to YouTube. Mobile video is expected to increase 14 times over the next 5 years. These are big, big numbers, and it tells us that video is one of the vehicles, is one of the formats that is going to be transformational for how we do things in an online context. What we have done is, to try to address some of this, we've launched HuffPost Live. HuffPost Live is a live streaming news channel, only in the US right now, 8 hours every day, 5 days a week. Very conversational. We have decided that if we do this, we don't want to do a low-cost CNN online. We want to do something different. So what we decided to do was use the technology to actually engage our audience, just like we do on our platform. So how can you do that if you're broadcasting live? How can you actually get people into the conversation? What we decided to do was we said, okay, we're going to set it up so people can they can see what's coming on our website. They can press a button saying be on air guest if they like the theme. They can do a 30-second video clip with the computer, with the camera on the computer, telling our producer why they should be part of that segment that we have coming up. Perhaps it's a Harvard professor coming in talking about the fiscal cliff. I have something to add, I want to join. If our producers think it is actually valuable, they will link them into the conversation, to the live conversation. They will link them in via Google Hangout or via Skype or via whatever vehicle they have on their computer, so they can take part in no matter where they are in the US or the world. We've had more than 20,000 guests joining our segments since we launched 2 years ago. So again, it was something we wanted, and it's been a highly successful format for us, and obviously true to our DNA, because we believe that to be successful in this space, it's about starting conversations. I wanted to just show you for 1.5 minutes a video that much better tells you what HuffPost Live is. Can we get some sound? Can we get sound for the video? Otherwise, it's not useful.
This is the Huffington Post. It launched in 2005, a time when social media was on the rise and the face of journalism went from this to this. And how we got the news went from this to this. It was in this social blogosphere where the Huffington Post gains its traction by taking news out of the hands of the analysts and giving it to
the community.
The community. The community.
The community.
So we were really at the moment, at the cusp of this great, social media revolution.
This is Roy.
Do you want a high or just?
He was at the Huffington Post when he teamed up with this guy, Gabriel, to answer the question, where do we go from here?
So basically, we said, let's take this thing that's already successful.
Just taking what was happening on Huffington Post.
And try to just do it in another medium.
And that's when it hit them. Video. So Roy and Gabriel set out to create a broadcast network that would have the same sort of community interaction as the Huffington Post.
So the question became, how do we embrace, the bloggers?
What is the story here? The real-time nature.
What's going on at the Chick-fil-A in Austin?
And all the things that we were doing, and the community.
In other words, how do you go from just presenting broadcast news to having people actually participate in it like they do online, but live and on air? Here's what they do.
My name is Francina.
I'm Sydney.
Gwen.
This is where it all starts. Each day, HuffPost producers scour the web looking for people with opinions.
We'll start streaming for comments, conversations that people are having that you normally wouldn't have, that makes it a little more unique than you would have at other platforms.
But on the web, people can be from anywhere, so they needed a way to bring them all together and in one place. And they found it online.
There's this big button that says, be an on-air guest. You can click that button and explain why you think you'd be a good guest for that segment.
A producer watches it, then
I send those comments to the host who can then pose them to our panel.
Live and on air.
I want to play a video comment that came in from a young woman in Saudi Arabia. This is about culture. Yeah, just came in.
So instead of having to have them drive to a sat hit to go do something somewhere, you can have them all in the same Google Hangout and they can be on HuffPost Live.
It happens often enough where the hair stands up on the back of your neck and you go, that's the future.
Here we go, guys. 5.
And so, maybe this is where technology's taking us. To a place that's less about being talked at and more about being talked with. When you think about it that way, the news feels more and more like a community.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope that gave a better explanation of what it was. But HuffPost Live was a huge bet. At the end of the day, we hired 100 people 2 years ago to do this. It was a big investment, as we heard before. For us, it's very much about trial and error. Fail fast if you're going to fail, but go big and see if it works. For us, it's worked tremendously well. The business has been live 2 years. We've had more than 1 billion video views. The business is now profitable. So again, you need to be courageous sometimes and make these kind of bets. And if it doesn't work, pivot and change. We pivot all the time. We change all the time. So HuffPost Live started in one space, but have changed many times along the way. We make adjustments, we optimize, and that's is the continued success here. Another shift that we saw is mobile. I talked about it again. These are trends from the industry. These are not HuffPost trends. So people are spending, as you can see here, it went from 24 minutes per day to 171. So it's smaller screen. It's challenging from a monetization perspective, and of course, scroll-focused formats and behavior. So it's a very, very different experience. And as I talked about, we need to think about it. We need to think about what are we doing on that screen and how do we make that stand out compared to what we do on the desktop. What is the experience? What are people doing? A lot of the things they're doing from a news consumption perspective is that people are often on the go when they use the mobile to consume news. So we need to factor that in. Our stories need to be shorter, needs to be a different setup. Whereas when you're on the desktop, if you're in the office, often you're not doing it on your mobile, you'll do it on the desktop, and it's a different experience. So that is very important. Our response to it, we've already said, we've invested a lot in kind of developing a good app. A year ago, we had a terrible app because we didn't take it seriously enough. Now I have a whole team just focusing on our mobile products because it's becoming such an important part of our business. And also from a monetization perspective, it also becomes important to share experiences from an advertiser perspective that are interesting. Personally, I think banners are very annoying on my mobile, so we try to come up with bigger, better formats on mobile. We believe video on mobile, both at the news vehicle, but also as an advertising format, is much more interesting. Cross-platform is important as well. A lot of people are talking about iPad or tablets. For me, iPad or tablets is really not that interesting. iPad or tablets is something people give to their children. They don't really use it. They talk a lot about how they use it, but they don't. So for me, it's really about the iPhone and the desktop. That's where we pay the most attention. Of course, things need to work on the iPad if by coincidence someone ends up on our site on the iPad. Some other interesting trends, the rise of social and the decline of organic search. So 23% of annual growth in time spent on social media. So Americans now spend more time on social media than on any other internet activity. And I think we will see a replication of that outside of the US. So social media, as I've talked about, is super important. At the same time, organic reach is getting close to zero. So there's things happening here that are key. How do we play into this? One of the things that we do is we want to be part of the conversation, as I said, and we use data to be part of that conversation. As I said, when we press enter, that's when our work starts. So as an example, this is a story from Ben & Jerry's. When we launched it, we saw there was a problem with it. We saw that it didn't really take off. It wasn't really that interesting. Again, that is the editor. It's not a data analyst. It's the person that actually launched this article. Staying with it, looking at it, is it developing how we would expect a story like that develop after we launch it. It didn't look too good in terms of the prediction. Again, we have data that will predict how this will go if that's the uptake you're seeing in the early hours. So what they did is they changed the headline. 9 a.m., they changed the headline. This is not looking interesting enough. So by changing the headline, same piece of content, this is what we saw instead. And I think that is the difference. That is kind of how you are successful in this day and age, in this world. If you look at your data, if you understand how to use it, with the same piece of content, we created a much more successful story. Again, social is key. I've already said we're the biggest on Facebook. We get a lot of daily comments, a lot of daily referrals. So I'm not going to talk too much about that. But obviously understanding this, understanding how they work, and understanding how the different platforms interact with each other is key if you want to be successful. I'm just quickly going to flip through these because I want to make sure we have a little time for question. A lot of people are talking about content marketing right now. And I just wanted briefly to give some perspective on where we see this going, because I actually think that is where we, as a publisher, adds a lot of value to conversations with brands, with advertisers, with communication agencies. Because at the end of the day, the challenges we see are challenges that every brand, every company will see from now on, because things are moving into social media and we need to treat that differently. So we actually call it brands as newsrooms. We actually think that brands need to think much more. They don't need to produce 1,600 stories on a daily basis. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying they need to have a very different approach to how they talk with their audience, how they stay with their audience, how they have an always-on approach. So content beyond your products, format authentic to your platform, stories that harness public sentiment, and technology that amplifies the reach. I think that is, for me, that is really the key. Doing the first two will help the brand. Doing all of this will make it highly shareable. And I think that is, again, it's a huge shift. For many years, online marketing, online advertising has been all about buying a lot of banners, buying a lot of impressions, and driving people to a brand site, to a product site, that people not necessarily wanted to be at. Today, the click-through rate on a banner is 0.01%. If that's not telling us that that's not what consumers want to do, then something is wrong with our ability to interpret data. At the end of the day, people do not log onto the internet to end up on a product site or brand site. That's not how they start. They might eventually end up there, but they start because they want to go on a social network, because they want to go to YouTube to watch video, they want to go to a news site. Those are normal behaviors. So what I'm saying is, if you actually start to develop content, find platform hubs where you can amplify those messages. Platforms like HuffPost, not only HuffPost, we have 100 million visitors on a monthly basis. Platforms like that where you can amplify your stories, and then eventually, when you have those people and have those conversations, it's fine that they end up on your on the platform brand destination. That's really it. I wanted to open it up for questions, so I hope we have a little bit of time to that. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Jimmy Maymann, for telling us the success story of the Huffington Post. And we are running a little bit late, ladies and gentlemen, so I definitely will open it up to questions from the room. And we have one right up here in the front. If we could get a microphone to zip up here.
We have one here.
We have one here as well.
Oh, there's one coming.
Could almost be faster.
You need to ask him, how does it work? This is the one.
If we got some volume on this microphone, please. We need some volume on the microphone.
The microphone is not working down here. Can we get some sound on?
Hello. Yes, it's
working. There it is.
Yep.
Coming.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. Here's my question. I took from your presentation that you very much rely on KPI and metrics, which probably focus on reach, having relevance for as many people as possible. Now, here's my question. Where do you draw the line between this objective and being truthful as a journalist? Because your people who are incentivized for getting greater audiences might not resist the temptation to stay truthful.
It's a great question, and I think it's a very relevant one, because what we're seeing right now is there's a lot of organizations, businesses in the US that is very viral, right? You take Upworthy as an example. It's really a viral business, but they take content and they get it out there and it gets a lot of reach. I think it's really a balance. You want to engage with a big audience, but at the same time, with the size we have a responsibility as a news organization. So we need to make sure that it's balanced. We need to make sure that we're also writing the stories that's not going to get 2 million people to read them, right? Yeah, because there are, when it burns, when it's big tragedies, stuff like that is not necessarily stuff that people want to share on their Facebook page. It's much easier to have the light stuff, the entertainment stuff, the lifestyle stuff. Those kind of things are things that more easily go viral. But at the same time, to your point, we have a commitment to, and it's in our DNA, to be a news organization. So we try to find the balance. It's not always easy, but we do have KPIs. Not all our KPIs is about how many people do we reach. It is also about the quality, it's also about the length of stories, and how actually, when it comes to the original pieces, to the analysis we do, it's not only about people reading the first couple of sentences, it's actually following them. Do they actually end the piece? Do they get to the conclusion? Or do they just read? We have summary boxes as well. Do they just read the summary box? So we spend a lot of time trying to analyze that as well. And a little bit more than a year ago, we won a Pulitzer Prize for Beyond the Battlefield, which is about the veterans in the US. If we just looked at that from a reach perspective, we would never have done that series. It was a huge series. It was a 6 months project of several journalists that kind of invested that, wrote a lot of stories. So we have a commitment to do that as well, because we feel that is important for our brand. But if we only looked for reach, then we wouldn't do stories like that. You're exactly right.
Further questions for Jimmy Maymann? One over here, Inge.
Thank you very much, very inspiring. Just wondering, did you read Dave Eggers' The Circle? And if so, what's your reaction?
Unfortunately not. I cannot claim I've read it.
Okay, sadly.
There goes that question, but there's one right next to her.
Rick Sednick from Euractiv Online Media. So very interested in your presentation. The thing I want to ask about is your international expansion. Many online communications consider language a barrier. it seems as though HuffPost considers it a bridge to getting to new audiences, new communities. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of language in your expansion into new languages?
Yeah, I didn't touch on that so much. Our global expansion has really been one where we've tried to keep a global focus, but to really be local. So we've actually launched our businesses with local partners, so we could tap into existing brands, existing organizations, and existing networks, and language and culture becomes hugely important. As an example, when we launched in Japan. It wasn't, and we launched 18 months ago in Japan. It wasn't clear to us how important the mobile internet was. Now everything, now it's easy because everywhere mobile internet is important. At that point in time, already 85% of people that came to our site was via the mobile internet, because the majority of people that use the internet, that's the way they do. So how do you, at that point in time, we had to change our business because we didn't really factor that in when we launched in Japan. So not only language and cultural barriers, but also technology are different from one country to the other in terms of adoption. If we take Twitter, for instance, when we launched, as I said, the community is important for us. Engagement is important. It's important to have conversations. Twitter in Germany, when we launched, wasn't really a big thing. It's getting bigger and bigger, and we just heard that when Germany won, there was I think it was probably the Brazilians that were tweeting. It was probably not the Germans, but because they were so sad about what happened. But those are also important things. What are the social media in those markets? What's the adoption rate? How are people using them? And as I said, also blogging is important for us. Do people want to blog? Do they want to share their opinions? If not, how do we get them to get involved? So there's a lot of things we have to factor in when we go into the different markets and have to think about differently because, as I said, adoption rates are different across all different markets.
Thank you very much for that question. Are there other questions in the room? Yes, at the back here.
Do you have any experience with scientific content? So, for example, the name of a chemical substance is longer than the letters in Twitter. How do you deal with that kind of content?
Do I personally have any experience with it, or does HuffPost have?
No, in your business.
No, we obviously work with medical brands as well, and one of the things, as you know, with that is that it's an area where you need to be very careful what it is you're putting out there. And the interesting thing, again, is we actually use our technology. We have a technology called Julia that is moderating all the comments on our site and is taking care of that. The comments that goes on is at the right level, is not harsh, it's not abusive to other people. If not, then people are kicked out. We use the same technology actually when we work with people in the medical industry. We use the same technology because we want to make sure if we advertise for pharmaceutical products that it's not ending up on sites with language that would be abusive next to something like that. So that's how we try to protect brands in those spaces.
Further questions? Yes, right here. You got a microphone already?
We've heard a lot last year about consumer-generated content and co-creation of content. I see that to some extent you're doing that with the Huffington Post Live, but is it something that you would consider for the written material too?
No, we are a big believer. I'm a big believer in consumer-generated content. As I said, I believe media has been democratized, so it's just a matter of finding out kind of what's of quality, what's relevant for an audience. But as I said, we have 55,000 bloggers, right? 55,000 people that are contributing, that are writing stories. Of course, some of them are very professional. You have everything from Bill Clinton to a Harvard professor to the average Joe on the street. And of course, they all have different perspectives. But some of them, often I think we're lucky. Because we have those subject matter experts. Often, as an example, if we have a story about the fiscal cliff, that is interesting. When the journalists uncover what it is and stuff like that. But if you want a deeper understanding of it, it's actually sometimes more interesting to read the Harvard professor because obviously he has a very, very different perspective on it and he comes at it from a different angle than a journalist. So I think that is actually a great way for us to integrate consumer-generated content on our site. And and it often, if it actually rises to the top, because that's what defines what's on the front page, if those bloggers rise to the top, it's because there's a lot of interest in those subject matters, and often it is the subject matter experts that actually gets a lot of views, a lot of visitors.
Very good question, and we've got time for one more. So one more here in the front. Can we have a microphone sprinted up here to the front, or do I have to, perhaps our microphone from earlier? Here we go.
There's one coming.
There we go.
Oh, there's one.
This one? Okay.
Yes.
Michael Fund from the Nordic Council of Ministers and International Governmental Organization. So you say that media has been democratized, and you invite in all this comment and all these opinions, and obviously everyone has an opinion about everything. So there's a risk that it becomes chatter, but you do sort of sift it, I suppose. But what is, if you think of media as the fourth estate, what is your political vision? Where is this going from a democratic and political point of view?
No, I think it's a good question, especially if you look in the US. Of course, it's very polarized in the US right now. If you take Fox on one end, which is almost a propaganda network from my perspective, and then you have MSNBC, which is more on the democratic side. So if you take that as the opposite pole, from my perspective, what it is we want to try to do is, we want to use this as a platform to create conversation, and we want to bring both sides to the table. So there will be times where we have things where we will agree that in the US, where we agree with the Democrats, there will be times where we editorially will agree with the Republicans, but we don't have, not like in the old days. If you were a newspaper in the old days, you were either left or right. We actually don't see that anymore because we believe that the audience is intelligent enough and they have access to information, so we shouldn't call them. We should just try to come out with, we're value-based, we should come out with what we think, and then we should open it up for the conversation. And we're not afraid to have those conversations on HuffPost, as long as you keep the tone. We do not want bashing or racist comments about other people because you don't believe that they're right in saying what they do. And to that end, we actually 6 months ago had to change our commenting system, because before, in the US, it's very important that you can be anonymous when you comment, and we have actually changed that. And there was a big outcry in the US because we changed our way, because we saw a decrease in the quality of it. There, we started to see more people going after each other rather than the ball, since we were talking football, and we changed it. So you now have to identify yourself. You either have to sign up on the site, or you have to use your Facebook profile to identify if you want to comment. And obviously, that has helped tremendously in terms of cleaning it up again, getting it back to the level where we want, where it's a valuable conversation that happens in the comments. When we had the Connecticut school shootings, we kept that story on our front page for 24 hours. We had more than 50,000 comments, and if you read the comments, some of them were, it was amazing perspectives on what it means for the society that we haven't changed in the US, the gun control so far. But I think that is important. It's important that, as a democracy, that you kind of have a platform where you can have those conversations, which we have never had before. We've never had that opportunity before. But as I said, media has been democratized, and therefore I think it is very important. That is also the sole reason why we have launched in Maghreb. Maghreb for us is never going to be a great business. We launched in Maghreb because we felt, the Arab Spring happened, and they needed a platform to continue the conversations. Otherwise, they would fall back into what they came from. So we launched in Maghreb. And it's now a great platform for conversation that tries to take, hopefully, those countries forward and will lead to a more sane democracy for the people living there.
Thank you very much for that question. Oh, one more over here. Okay, we'll take one more question. Then I'm going to have to wrap up, and we've got a microphone just literally sailing across the...
Good morning. My name is Philippe Lagarde from Adobe Systems. You talked about your partners to provide relevant content. How large is your partner ecosystem, and how do you manage it?
For us, when I talk about partners, our partners is really, we heard about it a second ago, it's really the bloggers, they're important partners, and then it's the newswires. Part of what we do is obviously work with the traditional, the Reuters, the APs, because otherwise we wouldn't be, as I said, we couldn't produce we could produce 1,600 stories, but we would lose a lot of money if we produced all those stories by ourselves. So that's how we try to partner. We produce our original stories, we have bloggers contributing with something, and we have the newswires. That's really the split for HuffPost, how we get to that number.
Jimmy, I'm wondering if we can wrap up just with a very quick piece of advice. You mentioned the partnerships, obviously, that are so essential. For the communications people here in the room, what would your advice to them be to work with you? In other words, get their own content involved in the conversations?
I think in general, as I said, that's what I truly believe. I truly believe that brands, that companies today need to find a way to produce more content and to have a more of an always-on approach. And obviously, very few organizations are set up to do that today. So as a starting point, they can tap into organizations like us. We actually have on the business side of our business, we've hired editors that are just working with our brands, our advertisers, journalists, that are helping them create their editorial strategy, that are helping them keep that conversation going. And that's a starting point. But over time, I do believe that the majority of that work should sit within the brands, within the organization. But we just felt that to get this going, we had to help them, we had to ignite that and help them amplify that in the early stages. A great example in the US was the Kraft Oreos campaign around the Super Bowl, when they reacted very fast on the light going out last year at the Super Bowl, and they had that huge moment on Twitter where they shared that ad. People thought, oh, that was amazing. They could, they were set up like a news organization. They had, 50 people sitting in a room, in a war room, leading up to it, planning what are different things we should be ready for. So, just like a news organization, when we go into the Oscars or a Super Bowl, another big event, we've pre-planned a lot of things. And then, because otherwise you can't react fast enough. And I think planning is important, getting the right organization, and then to tap into partners, to organizations, to get started.
So higher cost intensive on staff, but obviously new approach. Brands as newsrooms, and here we are in the middle of a paradigm shift. I wish we had a half an hour to continue the questioning. Thank you for kicking off our summit this year with such an inspiring presentation. Jimmy Maymann.
Thank you.